I never believed in anything paranormal. Peace. At least, no traffic. Not until that night. No crowds. A few years ago, my boyfriend invited me to spend the weekend at his house. Endless trees, quiet roads, the place was kind of in the countryside that makes you feel like you've escaped the world. No neighbors. At first, it was perfect. Just miles of trees and darkness. Everyone knew him. It felt peaceful during the day. Everyone talked about him. At night, it felt completely different. And everyone said the same thing. Around 2 a.m. Don't worry about Hector. I woke up suddenly. He's harmless. At first, just a strange guy. I didn't know why. That should have made me feel better. A deep humming sound. It made me nervous. It wasn't loud, because every time someone called him harmless, I could feel it more than looked away. The entire room seemed to vibrate. The first time I saw him, on the bedside he was standing outside a gas station. The walls shook slightly. Completely still. My boyfriend sat up instantly. His clothes looked dirty. You hear that too? His hair was a mess. I nodded. And his eyes never grew stronger. As I walked past him, he slowly turned his head and stared at me. Then suddenly, not my face. Boom. Me. The whole house shook. Like he already knew who I was. It felt like something massive had crashed crawled up my spine. We jumped out of bed. I quickly got into my car and the lights flickered. But that wasn't the last time I saw him. The sky lit up with bright flashes. Not even close. Not over the next few weeks, Hector seemed to appear everywhere. The flashes were white. At the grocery store, almost blinding. Near the hiking trails, and completely silent. Standing on empty roads. My phone lost signal. Always watching. His phone lost signal too. Always silent. And every single time I saw him for a second, I felt the same thing. Then off. Fear. Every electronic device in the house started acting strangely. One afternoon, that was when my boyfriend to explore a section of forest outside town. He whispered. Locals rarely followed his gaze toward the backyard. The woods stretched for miles. At first, I saw nothing. No houses. Then I noticed no roads. 2 figures. Just standing near the tree line. At first, everything felt normal. But something felt wrong. Leaves moving in the wind. They weren't walking. Sunlight breaking through the branches. They were swaying. Then I heard a voice. Back and forth. A man's voice. Like they were far ahead. Neither of them another hiker was nearby. Neither of them moved away. But as I got closer, something felt wrong. They just stood there. The voice was talking non-stop. I felt my stomach drop. Like someone having a conversation. My boyfriend grabbed a flashlight. There was only one person he pointed it toward them. Curious. They disappeared. I moved closer. Just gone. Step by step. No running. Quietly. No movement. Carefully. Nothing. Until I finally saw him. Empty. Hector. For a few seconds, standing alone in a small clearing. Too quiet. My heart nearly stopped. Then we heard footsteps. He wasn't talking to anyone. Inside the house. He was talking to himself. Heavy footsteps. But that wasn't coming from downstairs. The disturbing part was the voices. Nobody else was supposed to be there. One moment he sounded like an old man. The footsteps continued. The next moment he sounded like a child. Slow. Then a woman. Then one step at a time. Then someone the sound that terrified me most. The voices kept changing. The front door slammed open. Again. We heard it clearly. And again. Bang. It sounded like multiple people trapped inside one body. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Then another. I stood frozen behind a tree. Every locked door downstairs seemed to be flying open. Then my boyfriend grabbed a baseball bat. The four of us wanted to go downstairs, but we had no choice. We slowly walked toward the staircase. Straight toward me. The footsteps stopped. My blood turned cold. The house became silent again. There was no way he could have seen me. When we finally reached the first floor, I hadn't made a sound. Every door was open. I hadn't moved. Exactly as we had heard. Yet somehow, but nobody was there. For several seconds, neither of us moved. No broken windows. Then he smiled. Nothing. A slow. Just silence. Terrifying. We called the police. Smile. It took nearly 30 minutes he started to arrive. By then, directly the strange lights were gone. I turned and sprinted. The humming sound was gone. Branches whipped across my face. Everything looked normal. My lungs burned. The officers searched the property. Behind me, I could hear him crashing through the trees. The woods. Getting closer. The road. Closer. Everywhere. Closer. They found nothing. I didn't dare look back. One officer pointed out something strange. All I knew was that if he caught me, the ground outside was covered in mud from recent rain. I ran until my legs felt like they had been standing near the trees. Eventually, I burst out of the forest and reached my truck. There weren't. I jumped inside. Not a single one. Locked the doors. No footprints. And sped away. No tire tracks. My hands shook the entire drive home. The police eventually left. I barely slept. And life slowly returned to normal. I went to the sheriff's office. But even now, I told them everything. Years later. The voices. I still remember those two figures standing at the edge of the woods. Forest. watching us. Smile. Waiting. The sheriff listened quietly. And sometimes I wonder. His expression never changed. What would have happened if they had decided to come closer? When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. I thought I was going crazy. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. That's the only explanation I had. Years ago, because a brutal murder happened in those same woods, I watched lights dance across a lake. The victim was never given justice. And what happened on the final night still keeps me awake. The killer was never found. A few years ago, around the exact my life same time, fell apart. Hector appeared in town. My girlfriend left me. Nobody knew where he came from. The breakup was ugly. Nobody knew his real history. Every day felt heavier than the last. Nobody knew why he stayed. I couldn't sleep. But the timing always bothered people. The sheriff just told me there was never enough evidence to arrest him. So my parents offered me their old lakeside cabin. Suspicions. It sat far from whispers. No nothing more. No. A few months later, Hector vanished. Nothing but water. Trees, no goodbye, and silence. No explanation. At the time, that sounded no trace. I had no idea. It was as if he never existed. The first night was peaceful. Nobody knows where he went. I sat on the porch around what he was really doing deep in those woods. The lake looked like black glass. But sometimes, late at night, single ripple. I still think about those voices. Not a single sound. And one question then I noticed something strange. If Hector was a tiny light floating above the water, then who were all those other voices talking to? At first, I thought it was a boat. Most people go into the mountains to escape. But there were no boats on that lake. Artie and Katie wasn't moving normally either. Instead, they found something waiting for them. It was almost like it was a simple 4-day hiking trip through the mountains of upstate New York. Then suddenly, it vanished. No traffic. Just gone. No stress. No fading. Just endless wilderness and the sound of nature. 1 second it existed. The first day was perfect. The next second it didn't. The second day was beautiful. I convinced myself I was tired and went inside. And by the third night, everything changed. The second night was different. The sun disappeared behind the mountains. But this time it wasn't alone. And the forest became unnaturally quiet. Floating over the middle of the lake. Not normal quiet. My stomach quiet that makes you feel like every living thing around you is holding its breath. Not Katie noticed it first. Not blowing in the wind. No birds. Moving. Artie listened. Deliberately. She was right. Like they were following instructions. No insects. One rose upward. Nothing. Another dropped lower. Just silence. The third circled around kind of silence that makes your heart beat louder. The pattern repeated again and again. Trying not to think about it. It looked intelligent. They climbed into their tent and went to sleep. That was the part one couldn't explain. A few hours later, Artie grabbed my phone. At first, the second he didn't pointed the camera toward them. Then the light stopped moving. Crunch. Every single one. Crunch. As if they knew I was recording. Footsteps. I remember feeling a chill run down my spine. Moving through the darkness. Then all three lights shot across the lake. His eyes faster than anything I've ever seen. He held his breath and listened. My camera captured nothing but a blur. The footsteps stopped. And just right next to them, they disappeared. A cold feeling spread through his chest. I barely slept that night. But someone was standing outside. Is a dangerous thing. Listening. Because no matter how scared I was, I needed to see them again. Katie's name. The third night was already awake. And that's when everything changed. Around 1 a.m. the lights appeared again. Circling the tent. This time they were much closer. Slowly. Close enough to see their reflection on the water. Like whoever it was didn't want to be seen. 6 of them. Artie grabbed his flashlight. I stepped outside. The footsteps immediately stopped. The air felt strangely heavy. Silence. The lake was silent. He counted to 10. The trees were silent. Nothing. Everything felt wrong. Finally, the light started moving toward each other. Shined the light outside. Slowly. The forest was empty. Carefully. No people. Almost like they were gathering. No animals. One by one, they merged together. Just darkness. 6 lights became 5. The kind of darkness that feels alive. 4. He stepped outside and checked around the campsite. Until finally, nothing. There was only one. Not a single thing. A massive glowing orb hanging over the lake. He returned to the tent. I couldn't look away. But neither of them slept much after that. The thing was enormous. The next night was bigger than any light I'd seen before. Much worse. It pulsed. Around midnight, Katie woke up suddenly. Dim, bright. She heard something. Dim, like a heartbeat. A sound that didn't belong in those woods. It started moving toward the cabin. A high-pitched giggle nearly stopped. Like a child laughing. Crossed the lake without making a sound. Then another. No engine. Closer. No wind. Artie sat upright. He heard it too. Movement. A faint laugh drifting through the trees. Closer. Then another. And another. Taking a step back. The giggling moved around them. Then another. Sometimes close. The light reached the shoreline. Sometimes far away. For a moment, everything never staying in one place. Neither of them spoke. The grass. Neither of them moved. The cabin. Because deep down, everything they both knew something terrifying. Then the orb exploded. There shouldn't have been any children out there. Not for miles. Fireworks. The laughter continued for almost an hour. Hundreds of smaller lights burst from it stopped. Shooting in the silence returned. Into the woods. And somehow, that felt even worse. Across the yard. Just as they began to relax, a voice whispered from outside the tent. The entire area lit up like daylight. Both of them froze. Branches to catch fire. Their blood turned to ice. I expected windows to shatter. Katie slowly looked at him. I expected something. She hadn't said anything. And neither had he. No whisper came again. No damage. Closer this time. Nothing at all. Artie. The lights simply sounded wrong. One by one. Until darkness returned. Like something trying to imitate a person. Unable to move. A hand suddenly pressed against the side of the tent. The lace was calm again. The fabric pushed inward. Quiet again. Then another pull. It was as if none of it had happened. Harder. The next morning, something was grabbing the tent from outside. The shoreline. Yanking it. The testing it. Trying to get in. Artie grabbed his knife. No burn marks. His hands shook so badly he nearly dropped it. The tent jerked in branches. Then again. No evidence. Then, nothing. It was like the lights had never existed. The forest went silent. I left the cabin 2 days later. I've never gone back. For the rest of the night, neither of them moved. And I've never seen those lights again. They sat awake waiting for sunrise. Late at night, waiting for whatever was outside to come back. If those lights were only passing through, they stepped where were they going? And what they saw made them wish they had stopped at my door. Around the entire campsite were dozens of small rock piles. Perfectly arranged. As if someone had spent hours creating them. But that wasn't the worst part. Symbols had been scratched into the dirt. Strange shapes. Circles. Lines. Patterns. None of them recognized any of it. And none of it had been there the night before. Someone, or something, had created it while they slept. Or while they listened in terror from inside the tent. That was enough. The trip was over. They packed everything immediately. No breakfast. No pictures. No discussion. Just leave. As they hiked back toward civilization, neither of them spoke. Both were afraid to ask the same question. Who had been outside their tent? Years later, Artie still talks about that trip. But one detail continues to haunt him. The voice. Because when it whispered his name, it sounded exactly like someone who knew him. And to this day, he has no idea how anything in those mountains could have known who he was.